Hey, life can change in an instant. 1 minute, everything feels normal, and the next, someone else's mistake turns your world upside down. That's when you need a team you can count on. NACE Law Group has been standing up for DC families for decades, fighting for neighbors hurt by medical malpractice, wrongful deaths, and serious injuries. They don't just settle quickly or push papers. They dig in, fight hard, and make sure every client gets the justice they deserve. And here's something we love. They're a longtime supporter of CityCast because just like us, they care about this community and the people who call it home. So if you've been hurt or someone you care about has, pick up the phone. Call NACE Law Group. They'll stand with you, fight for your family, and make sure your rights are protected. Visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com. That's WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com.
This podcast is brought to you by Wise, the app for international people using money around the globe. With Wise, you can send, spend, and receive up to 40 currencies and save up to 55% compared to major banks. Plus, Wise won't add hidden fees to your transfer. Whether you're buying souvenirs with pesos in Puerto Vallarta or spending euros to tip your Colosseum tour guide, you know you're getting a fair exchange rate with no extra markups. Join the 15 million customers who choose Wise. Download the Wise app today or visit wise.com/US/compare to learn more. Terms and conditions apply.
Today on CityCast DC, Tom Sietsema, the longtime food critic at the Washington Post, announced yesterday that he's retiring, and he finally revealed his identity. Now, most DC restaurants still knew what he looked like and tried to look out for him, but he can now put down all of the disguises. To honor his many years scouring the DMV for the best food, we're taking you back to an episode where he sat down with CityCast co-host Michael Schaefer, describing what it was like to be anonymous and use pseudonyms. Today is Wednesday, October 8th. I'm senior producer Julia Karen, and here's what DC is talking about. Okay, before we get to the show, as the government remains in a shutdown, we are crowdsourcing all of your ideas. We want your favorite non-federal DC itineraries. So think no Smithsonian's, no zoos, nothing like that. What are some of your favorite things to do in DC that don't involve institutions affected by the shutdown? Email us at dc@citycast.fm. Okay, here's Mike's chat with Tom Sietsema.
Tom Sietsema, welcome.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So you wrote this piece about a week in your life. You have one of those jobs in Washington, food critic, that people are intensely curious about what it's like to be one. What do you think is the best thing about being a restaurant critic in DC?
You know, I am lucky to have sort of a front row seat to all sorts of trends. I think first and foremost, I feel like a cheerleader for diners, and I love that. And I love the relationship that I have with diners and readers of the Washington Post. I mean, that is always key for me. I don't feel like I'm a cheerleader for the industry. I'm looking out for people who are spending their hard-earned money, hopefully. But I do feel, I pinch myself, even these many years later, I've been in this job since 2000. I pinch myself every day. I'm lucky to have a job that I'm paid to do. That it's basically my hobby. You know, I've always been interested in food and cooking and restaurants, and I used to save up my money before I was doing this professionally to see what was going on in restaurants with my predecessor and others around the country. And I just feel grateful to have a job that allows me to be out and about and document this for readers of the Washington Post.
So at the risk of sounding yokelish, how do you think our food scene in the DMV compares to other cities?
You know, thanks for asking. In 2015, I had the great opportunity to travel around the country for a year and rate the top 10 food cities. And I spent at least a week in 12 cities and came up with a top 10 list. Portland, Oregon was number one. And I was looking not just at restaurants, but also at bars and farm markets and grocery stores and agriculture, all of that. And at the time, Washington came in at number 9. Again, this was in 2015.
What's stronger here than other places and what's weaker here than other places?
Well, I think, you know, as a world capital, I think we have a little bit of everything here. I mean, we might be missing real deli as one gets in New York, but I think pretty much every other part of the globe is very well represented in Washington. Maybe not in the numbers that you get in, say, Los Angeles or New York, but we're quite a bit smaller than those markets. I will say, I do feel like our food scene is really exciting. And I think if you care about fine dining, which is one aspect of what I cover, there's no place better than Washington to do that. I think we're really on the cutting edge, not in terms of old guard French or Italian restaurants, but hip, new, fun, sexy places to spend a lot of money and eat really well.
So you wrote that the kind of default question a stranger might ask you when they meet you is, what's your favorite DC restaurant? Let me subvert that. What was your worst DC restaurant experience?
Oh, wow. Well, I always tell people I eat bad food so you don't have to, right? That's part of the job. I have had lots of lesser meals, I think, in the course of doing this job. Probably the place that readers might remember the most was a number of years ago, I reviewed Founding Farmers in Foggy Bottom and gave it 0 stars. And this was after going there 7 or 8 times. So I felt like I really did due diligence. I went by myself. I went with groups of people. I went when it was slower on a Monday, when it was busy on a Saturday. I went for lunch and dinner and back. And I just felt like it was more farm to fable than farm to table. A lot of readers disagreed with me. A lot of people, it was sort of half and half. It was one of these things. But that was probably the worst dining experience that I've had in the last decade or so.
So you panned them, and then what happened? I mean, there was a time when the lead restaurant critic of the daily newspaper could probably get a place shut down with a harsh review. Is that still true? People have so many other options.
I think it depends upon the restaurant and the critic and what is actually written about that restaurant. In the case of, there are some restaurants that are just critic proof. I look at places like Cafe Milano in Georgetown. I just ate there. I take the pulse of a lot of restaurants that are fairly popular, people are curious about, and Cafe Milano is certainly one of those. And I went back recently, and the pizza's still not really good, and the lobster in the pasta was overcooked. And I felt like I was crashing a private party, like I did not belong. The draw there, I think, is not so much the food, but the fact that Democrats and Republicans and every persuasion can sort of find a place there, especially if you're famous, especially if you're with the administration.
Bad food for bad people.
Bad. You said it, I didn't.
So wait, you said you were to Founding Farmers 7 or 8 times. How many times do you usually go in order to feel like you've been fair?
I typically go at least 3 times. I think that's fair because, restaurants are living beings, and 3 visits, multiple visits gives me the opportunity to sit in different parts of the restaurant, to reorder dishes. Is the chicken always that dry? Is it always that juicy? To get different servers. And I think one of the reasons most publications go back multiple times is because, unlike a book reviewer, a film reviewer, the author or the director can't change the ending necessarily for individual critics. But a lot of things can happen if a known critic is in a restaurant to sort of make things better for that critic. And over the years, you just develop, the fact that people are overly friendly or something like that. I pay attention to what's going on, not always at my table so much, but at surrounding tables. I'll walk through the restaurant to see if people are trying to flag down a waiter for a check, or if it looks like their tables aren't cleared and that sort of thing. I also have little tricks. I sometimes show up late and my party will have been seated already so that the appetizer is on its way and they have no idea that the critic from the Washington Post is coming and is going to sit down to that, right? So there are ways of getting around, the fact that after all these years and with social media and cameras and all that, it's harder and harder to go in as an unknown entity anymore. But I have some little trade secrets that help me toward that end.
But it sounds like you figure that anybody who really wants to make it their business is going to figure out what you look like.
Well, I certainly would. If I was a restaurant owner, I would identify people that you eat with, as restaurants have done, and find out what your tastes are, what you like to, just by writing, people know that I like booths rather than tables, and I like red wine to be a little chilled. People will sometimes comment on that too when they're bringing it over the table. Oh, we just chilled this red wine. Okay, well, thank you very much. Just do it for everybody else,
Is there a way you can tell if you've been made?
Oh, sure. Yeah. People will parade by your table, like the busboys, all the waiters. All of a sudden, you have this sense that people are looking at you, you know. I have to change the names that I use for my reservations with more frequency now because word gets out. I know that people pass my pseudonyms along to fellow restaurants. I've used burner phones before. I call from friends' phones to make reservations. I have probably 15 Resi and Open Table accounts. I have different names on different credit cards.
I won't ask for any of your current pseudonyms, but do you have a favorite retired pseudonym?
I do. It was Don Cook. Don Cook, Mr. Cook. If you say it real fast, it's like, I don't cook. That's pretty stupid, I realize, but like I thought it was pretty clever 12 years ago.
And just for the record, you are a 4'3" blonde man with a ponytail.
I love it. Yes, exactly.
So look, obviously you eat a ton every day. Like, how do you stay hungry for it all? And I mean, like, literally, how do you stay hungry for it all? Is someone going to suffer because you happen to show up late and you've already had a big lunch?
You know, that's such a good question. I try not to eat a full meal. And I think the restaurant critic diet is a pretty good diet because when I go out with groups of people, we'll trade plates. And everyone at that table, say I go out with 4 people, people will not eat half of it because they know 3 other people are going to be eating off that dish too. And 2, not all food is delicious. So unless something is truly delicious, I don't finish it. And I've been known to salt desserts so that I don't mindlessly keep eating the ice cream or the lemon tart or whatever is in front of me as we're winding down the evening.
So salt, you mean like literally you will put salt on top of them in order to...
I have been known to do that. Yeah, just so I stop eating it. But then unfortunately people forget that I have done that and they, people across the table dig in and like, wow, this dessert is salty.
Do you like take a doggy bag when you leave?
I am from the Midwest. I'm a big believer in not wasting things. And if I don't take it home, I oftentimes send it home with friends or dining companions I'm with.
Just don't take the man's dessert.
Don't take the man's dessert.
Hey, don't miss the Folger Theater's Julius X, playing now through October 26th at the Folger Shakespeare Library. This bold new play by Peabody Award-winning journalist Al Letson remixes Shakespeare's Julius Caesar with the history of Malcolm X, sampling lyrically and historically from Shakespeare's text, from famous speeches by civil rights leaders, and from Letson's own verse. Called Urgent and Timeless by the Washington Lobbyist, Julius X explores the cyclical nature of societal strife, as well as the shared human experiences of ambition, betrayal, and brotherhood. Tickets start at $20 and can be purchased online at folger.edu or by calling the box office at 202-544-7077. Tuesday through Sunday, 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. Get yours today. CityCast DC is made possible by the Peabody Institute of the Johns Hopkins University, presenting the Peabody Performance Series, a full season of free concerts at the Johns Hopkins University Bloomberg Center located at 555 Pennsylvania Avenue. The Peabody Performance Series brings the artistry and innovation of one of the nation's leading conservatories to the heart of Washington, D.C. With concerts and programs spanning jazz, classical, chamber music, opera, and dance, the series showcases Peabody's world-class faculty, accomplished students, distinguished alumni, and renowned guest artists. Each event invites audiences to react, reflect, and recharge through the arts while sparking dialogue on the role of performance in civic life. This fall, the series opens October 3rd with the Peabody Camerata in a program of powerful choral and chamber music. On October 8th, Peabody musicians provide live music for the film screening of the Academy Award-winning Netflix documentary The Only Girl in the Orchestra. Peabody Graduate Jazz Ensemble performs original works and new arrangements on October 31st. And on November 14th, the first Slang Lecture explores American roots music, led by distinguished visiting faculty artist Darren Atwater. While all the events are free, tickets are required for entry. The full performance schedule and ticket information is at washingtondc.jhu.edu.
For years, DC has been told that outdated, tough-on-crime ideas are the only way forward. But what residents want and need is investment in real, effective solutions. Programs like community violence intervention, housing first approaches, trauma-informed care, and mentorship programs are helping break the cycle of violence today. It's time to invest in what actually works. If we're going to talk about public safety in DC, let's talk about what we know really makes us safe. Go to realsafetydc.org to learn more.
In your diary of the week, you mentioned how you love to eat with a variety of people. You sometimes call friends from embassies to experience food of a specific culture.
Sure.
I'm curious, who's the ideal person to share a meal with?
The ideal person is not a food person. I would rather talk about anything other than food at the table. I think it all depends upon the restaurant. I love to experience like a high-end restaurant through the eyes of someone who would never be able to afford that, like a college student or a young family, a young couple just starting out. I like someone who has very few allergies, no dietary restrictions. I like people who are good conversationalists. I appreciate learning. I feel like it's a masterclass for me sometimes. I get to eat out with lawyers or people from the White House or people who have spent a significant time abroad, so those are the kinds of discussions we have. It's not usually talking about the food. That's my job, is to remember the funny thing the waiter said, every sauce that goes past me on the rotation, that sort of thing.
One thing in your diary that I thought was interesting was you inspect the restroom every time you go to a restaurant. What does that reveal?
Well, I do that for a couple of reasons. I think cleanliness is really important. It's one of those things that a lot of readers care about, but also in the last year or so, I've added accessibility to my restaurant reviews. And so I want to know whether people in wheelchairs can access the restroom. And so I do it for several reasons. One, for like a cleanliness, attention to detail matter, and the other for to see if people in wheelchairs can get into the restroom.
How much of an issue is accessibility? I mean, how are DC restaurants in general on that measure?
Well, I think newer restaurants have to be accessible, but I think with older places, sometimes historic places, their restrooms have been grandfathered in, and it's so expensive to put in elevators and all sorts of things like that, that some restaurants still aren't as welcoming to people with disabilities.
I don't know if I want to hear the full answer to this, but do you have a best and worst bathroom memory?
I don't offhand. I will say that just because you're an expensive venue doesn't mean your restrooms are any cleaner than those you might find in, say, a dive.
Well, right. And we've also changed our aesthetics some, so that some of the most highbrow and priciest places, it's not the days when you had like a bathroom attendant who will hand you a napkin.
Sure.
They've kind of aestheticized a degree of grunge too in some cases.
Sure.
You mentioned it's important that you take the pulse of the neighborhood where you're eating. Tough decision, but what do you think is the best restaurant neighborhood in DC or the environs?
Oh, right now, I think the Hill has improved quite a bit. It used to be a little bit sort of B grade, I guess, but there are some great watering holes up there. I love the Duck and the Peach. The old standbys, of course, like Market Lunch, have been there forever, but I like the fact that you can drink and eat so much better on the Hill. There's Rose's Luxury up there and Pineapple and Pearls, sibling restaurants. You can eat very well on the Hill. I think that is probably most improved. Georgetown has gotten a lot better too. Places that I'm most drawn to might be in Shaw and where else? The burbs have gotten really good. I have to say, there's plenty of reasons for people in Alexandria and Tyson's Corner and Bethesda to stay home and eat close, eat nearby.
One dramatic thing in your diary that you revealed is you hate brunch, or at least you're not a big fan. Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think a lot of critics don't like brunch because it's sort of this meal that sort of happens in the middle of the day, and there's usually alcohol and sometimes too much of it involved, and you just want to go home and take a nap. It sort of ends up being a lost day if you're drinking at like 1:00. It's like day drinking and eating fatty food and all of this. I also feel like it's generally the B team cooking then, because the A team is cooked on Friday and Saturday night and they need a day off. And so you might not be getting the best food and you might be drinking a little bit more than you would at that time of day typically.
I remember once proposing a feature that would be like, where chefs eat. And my colleagues who wrote about restaurants were like, no, that's a really stupid idea because chefs are freaks. They work until 11, 12, 1 in the morning. They go out to a place where their friend might be serving because like nothing else is open. These
Sure.
are not people with a sort of normal life whose choices can affect you. But you all, as food critics, are a little bit freaks too. I mean, in the sense that you live an unusual culinary life. How do you keep yourself grounded with how your readers are going to want to eat?
How do I keep myself grounded? I think I keep myself grounded by being careful about who I eat out with. Again, I like to eat out with people who aren't me, who come from different economic and other backgrounds, who might not be white, who might not be male. I think that's important to keep me grounded in terms of what might surprise readers or what might tickle readers or what might turn readers off. I also think it's really important to cook a little bit at home too. And so I have dinner parties every 6 weeks or so. I think it's important, if you care about food and you want to know how things are made. And I think it's important for critics to get their hands a little dirty and go shopping and cook at home and appreciate the labor and the time and the thought that goes into a carefully made meal.
Did my invitation to that dinner party get lost in the mail? What happened?
Oh, you're next, Michael.
As we've had huge changes in media. If I wanted to go, figure out where to go eat tonight, I'd go online and I might get you, a professional and very conscientious restaurant critic, or I might get like Joe2257 on Yelp. Is there a future for someone who's starting out now in journalism and wants to make being a restaurant critic their career? And if so, what should they do?
Sure. I started in the Pleistocene era, and the deal then was you either started a big newspaper and then you go small and get ever better jobs. You work your way around the country as I did. I was my predecessor's assistant for 3 years. So I learned how to cook. I learned what a good story was, that sort of thing. But I left being someone's assistant at the Washington Post and became the food editor at the Milwaukee Journal, right? And now, like a lot of newspapers don't have restaurant critics anymore, right? So my thing is, if I was starting out today, you need to write. I would start a blog. I would just start writing a newsletter, whatever it is, get a little following. Hey, reach out to people you trust to edit your work, whether that's a college professor or someone who is just really good with words, or I get stuff unsolicited all the time from people. Hey, would you read this? I got a batch of reviews from 4th graders last week. And it was utterly charming. A school teacher from Fairfax sent me a batch of reviews from her students. And so it's never, but the thing is, if you start out, you can't just say, oh, I love food and I love to eat out. Well, a lot of people like to do that. You have to have something to point to when people ask, well, how do you know about food? Or what do you know? Or how do you know how to write? And I also think it's really important, write about your passion. Is it barbecue? Is it coffee? Is it Thai food? Is it, whatever, and become an expert in that. So anytime people will have a question about that or an interest in that cuisine or that cooking style, whatever it is, they will come to you for that.
Tom Sietsema, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me, Michael. This is great.
That's all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. Also, thank you so much to all of our new CityCast DC neighbors. We are so thrilled to have you here. And as a reminder, if you haven't joined, you can still do so at membership.citycast.fm. It's the best and most fun way to support the work we do. And also, we want all of your ideas. Since the government remains shut down, we want to crowdsource your favorite non-federal DC itineraries. What are some of your favorite things to do in DC that don't involve places affected by the shutdown? Email us at dc@citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.